The scene opens in a lively restaurant. The clinking of cutlery, murmuring customers, and the occasional shout of orders from the kitchen fill the air. Among the waiters moving swiftly between tables, we focus on one young man, Daniel, a hardworking and kind-hearted waiter in his mid-20s. Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness could change your life forever? We go through life making choices every day. Some big, some small. But sometimes, it's the smallest actions that lead to the most unexpected outcomes. Daniel wipes his forehead as he rushes between tables, balancing plates and keeping customers satisfied. He notices a small boy sitting alone near the window, his clothes slightly worn, his eyes fixed on a plate of food at a nearby table. This is Daniel, a young man who knows the weight of struggle. Working long hours to support his mother and younger sister, he barely makes enough to keep food on their own table. Yet, tonight, he's about to make a decision that will change his destiny forever. The boy hesitantly approaches Daniel at the counter. Boy, softly. Excuse me, sir. Do you know if there's any leftover food that the restaurant throws away? Daniel glances at the manager, who is busy counting receipts. His heart sinks. He knows what it's like to be hungry. Daniel, gently smiling. Don't worry about that. You can sit down. I'll bring you something fresh. Ignoring the fact that he barely has money to spare, Daniel reaches into his pocket and pulls out his own tips from the day. He orders a warm meal for the boy and places it in front of him. The boy's face lights up with gratitude. Daniel didn't know it at the time, but this small act of kindness would lead him to a place he never imagined, a billionaire's mansion. As Daniel turns away, the scene fades to black, leaving the audience intrigued about what happens next. The restaurant is buzzing with activity. Daniel continues his shift, but his mind keeps drifting back to the boy, who is now quietly eating his meal. The boy eats slowly, savoring every bite, as if he hasn't had a warm meal in days. Daniel wasn't a rich man. In fact, most days, he barely made enough to survive. But he understood hunger. He understood struggle. And that was enough to make him act. Cut to Daniel's small apartment. He enters quietly, careful not to wake his mother and little sister, who are asleep in the cramped living room. The space is small but clean, with old furniture and a single flickering light bulb overhead. Daniel sighs, placing the few bills he earned today onto the counter. Daniel, to himself, whispering, "Tomorrow will be better. It has to be." The scene cuts to the next morning. Daniel arrives at the restaurant, stretching his sore shoulders from working late the night before. As he ties his apron, a coworker, Lisa, leans in with curiosity. Lisa, teasingly, "Hey, big spender. I saw you paying for that kid's meal last night. What if the manager had caught you?" Daniel, shrugging, smiling slightly. "Then I guess I'd be looking for a new job." Lisa, raising an eyebrow. "Seriously, though, you barely make enough for yourself, Danny. Why do it?" Daniel, pausing, then softly, "Because no one should have to beg for food. Not a kid. Not anyone." Before Lisa can respond, the restaurant door swings open. A sharply dressed man in a black suit enters, looking around the room. His eyes land on Daniel, and he strides toward him with authority. Man in suit. "Are you Daniel?" Daniel, caught off guard, hesitates before nodding. Man in suit, handing him an elegant envelope. "You are cordially invited to dine at the estate of Mr. William Harrington this evening. Transportation will be provided." Lisa and other waiters exchange stunned glances. Daniel, confused, stares at the envelope in his hands. "Daniel, I don't understand. Who is Mr. Harrington?" Man in suit, smiling slightly. "You'll find out soon enough." With that, the man turns and leaves, leaving Daniel speechless, still clutching the invitation. Little did Daniel know, his act of kindness had not gone unnoticed. And by the end of the night, his life would never be the same. The scene opens with Daniel standing outside his small apartment, still staring at the elegant envelope in his hands. His fingers trace the embossed golden letters of the invitation. He turns to his mother, Maria, who watches him with a mix of pride and concern. Maria, frowning slightly. "A billionaire's mansion? Are you sure this isn't some kind of mistake?" Daniel, shrugging. "I don't know. but it's real. And they sent a car to pick me up. A sleek black car pulls up outside their rundown apartment building. The driver, dressed in a crisp uniform, steps out and opens the back door. Driver, politely, Mr. Daniel, we're ready when you are. Daniel hesitates, looking at his mother and younger sister, Lily. Maria gently squeezes his shoulder. Maria, softly, go. See what this is about. Maybe it's something good. With a deep breath, Daniel steps into the car, and the door closes behind him. The vehicle glides through the city streets, leaving behind the familiar neighborhood Daniel has always known. The car arrives at a massive iron gate, which slowly swings open, revealing an enormous mansion surrounded by acres of beautifully manicured gardens. Daniel's eyes widen as he takes in the sight, something he's only ever seen in movies. For someone who had spent his life struggling to make ends meet, this felt like stepping into another world. The car stops in front of the grand entrance. The driver opens the door, and Daniel steps out, feeling out of place in his simple clothes. A butler approaches and gestures toward the front doors. Butler, calmly. Right this way, sir. Mr. Harrington is expecting you. Daniel follows him inside, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. The mansion's interior is breathtaking. Golden chandeliers, intricate paintings, and a long, grand staircase leading to the upper levels. As he looks around in awe, a deep, authoritative voice calls out, Mr. Harrington, off-screen. So, you're the young man who helped my grandson. Daniel turns sharply. Standing near the grand fireplace is an older gentleman, dressed in a tailored suit. His sharp blue eyes study Daniel with curiosity and something else, gratitude. Daniel, blinking in shock. Your grandson? From behind Mr. Harrington, the small boy from the restaurant peeks out, his eyes lighting up when he sees Daniel. Boy, excitedly. It's you. I told Grandpa about you. Daniel looks between the child and the older man, still trying to process what's happening. Mr. Harrington, nodding. My grandson, Oliver, ran away from home 2 days ago. He was upset, grieving his parents. We searched everywhere for him. But that night, when he was alone and hungry, you showed him kindness. You didn't know who he was. You didn't expect anything in return. And yet, you helped him. Daniel swallows, feeling overwhelmed. He hadn't done anything extraordinary. At least, that's what he thought. Daniel, softly. I couldn't let a kid go hungry. Mr. Harrington, smiling for the first time. Exactly. And that's why you're here. Daniel stares at him, confused. Mr. Harrington gestures toward the lavish dining room, where a luxurious dinner has been set up. Mr. Harrington, join us for dinner, Daniel. We have much to discuss. Daniel hesitates for a moment, but then nods, following them into the grand dining hall, unaware that this night will change his life forever. The scene shifts to the grand dining hall, where an enormous table is set with elegant silverware and steaming dishes that Daniel has never even seen before. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the luxurious setting. Daniel hesitantly takes a seat across from Mr. Harrington, with Oliver sitting beside his grandfather, beaming. For Daniel, this was like stepping into a completely different world. Just yesterday, he was struggling to make ends meet, and now he was seated at the table of one of the richest men in the city. But he had no idea why he was really here. A waiter pours Daniel a glass of water, and he shifts uncomfortably, feeling completely out of place. Mr. Harrington watches him for a moment before speaking. Mr. Harrington, calmly. Tell me, Daniel, why did you pay for Oliver's meal that night? Daniel glances at Oliver, who is happily eating, then looks back at Mr. Harrington. Daniel, shrugging. I didn't really think about it. He was hungry. I had the money. It just felt like the right thing to do. Mr. Harrington nods, seemingly pleased with the answer. Mr. Harrington, most people would have looked the other way. But not you. Why? Daniel, pausing, then softly. Because I know what it's like to be hungry. A brief silence falls over the room. Mr. Harrington studies Daniel, his sharp eyes filled with curiosity. He takes a sip of his wine before speaking again. Mr. Harrington, tell me about yourself, Daniel. Your family. Your life. Daniel hesitates, then sighs, deciding there's no point in hiding the truth. Daniel, my mother and sister live in a tiny apartment. My dad left when I was little, so I had to start working early. I waited tables during high school, and when I graduated, college wasn't an option. So I kept working, trying to help my mom, trying to give my sister a better life than the one I had. Mr. Harrington listens intently, nodding slowly. Oliver watches Daniel with admiration, as if he's hearing the story of a hero. Mr. Harrington, thoughtful. And yet, despite your own struggles, you chose to help someone else. Daniel, shrugging. Helping someone else doesn't take away from what I have. If anything, it makes life a little better. Mr. Harrington smiles slightly, then leans forward. Mr. Harrington, Daniel, I didn't invite you here just to thank you. I invited you because I see something in you. Something rare. Integrity, compassion, and a willingness to do the right thing even when no one is watching. Daniel looks confused, unsure where this is going. Daniel, I appreciate that, sir, but why does that matter to you? Mr. Harrington exhales deeply and looks at Oliver, who is listening intently. Mr. Harrington, because my grandson needs a role model, someone who understands the value of hard work and kindness. I want you to work for me, Daniel. Daniel blinks, completely caught off guard. Daniel, work for you? Doing what? Mr. Harrington leans back in his chair, folding his hands. Mr. Harrington, I want you to become Oliver's mentor, a guide. Teach him about the real world. Show him what it means to work hard, to be responsible. In return, I will pay you more than you could ever earn as a waiter. And if you choose to, I'll fund your education too. Daniel stares at him, unable to believe what he's hearing. He glances at Oliver, who looks at him with hopeful eyes. Oliver, grinning, I like that idea. Daniel exhales sharply, his mind racing. This offer, it's life-changing. But is it real? Can he really just step into this world, just because of one good deed? Daniel, hesitantly. I don't know what to say. Mr. Harrington, smiling. Say yes, but don't say it now. Think about it. Spend the night here if you like. And in the morning, if you're ready, we'll talk more. Daniel nods slowly, still overwhelmed. The weight of this moment presses on him. He came from nothing, and now he was being offered everything. But was he ready for it? In that moment, Daniel realized that one simple act of kindness had not only changed Oliver's life, but his own as well. And the biggest decision of his life was now before him. The scene opens in a lavish guest room inside the mansion. Daniel lies awake in a massive bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind races as he replays the conversation with Mr. Harrington. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a complete shift in Daniel's life. A doorway into a world he never imagined being a part of. But was it really meant for him? Cut to early morning. Daniel stands on the mansion's balcony, looking out at the sprawling estate. The sun rises over the beautifully kept gardens, and for a moment, he lets himself enjoy the peace. But then his thoughts turn to home, to his mother, to his sister, to the struggles they still face. A knock at the door interrupts his thoughts. He turns to see Oliver standing there, holding a soccer ball. Oliver, grinning. Wanna play? Daniel hesitates but then nods. Cut to an open field on the mansion grounds. Daniel and Oliver kick the ball around, laughing. Despite their different worlds, a bond is forming. Oliver, catching his breath, you know, I don't really have anyone to talk to. Since my parents passed, Grandpa is always busy, and the people around here, they just see me as the rich kid. But you're different. Daniel pauses, looking at the boy. Daniel, I think people assume that money makes life easier. But losing someone you love, that's hard no matter who you are. Oliver nods, looking down. Daniel watches him, realizing that maybe, just maybe, this is where he's meant to be. Cut to later that morning. Daniel stands in the grand dining hall again, this time facing Mr. Harrington. Daniel, taking a deep breath. I'll do it. Mr. Harrington nods approvingly, a rare smile on his face. Mr. Harrington, good. You won't regret it. The next few weeks pass in a montage. Daniel adjusting to life at the mansion, teaching Oliver simple things. How to tie his own shoes, how to help the kitchen staff clean up, how to understand the value of things rather than just their price. At the same time, Daniel struggles with feeling like an outsider in this wealthy world. One evening, as Daniel helps Oliver with homework, a few of Mr. Harrington's business associates visit the estate. One of them, a man in an expensive suit, watches Daniel with disapproval. Businessman, to Mr. Harrington, whispering, "You really hired a waiter to mentor your grandson? What can he possibly teach him about success?" Daniel overhears this, his jaw tightening. He clenches his fists but stays silent. Mr. Harrington, calmly, "Success isn't just about money. It's about character. And Daniel has more of that than most men I know." Daniel exhales slowly, feeling both grateful and conflicted. Can he really belong in this world? Despite his doubts, Daniel was proving something, not just to Mr. Harrington, but to himself, that he wasn't just a waiter. He was someone who could make a difference. The scene opens on a bright morning at the mansion. Daniel walks through the garden, watching Oliver play soccer. He smiles to himself, realizing how much the boy has grown, not just in skill, but in attitude. He no longer expects others to do things for him. He works hard, listens, and respects the people around him. In just a few months, Oliver had changed, and so had Daniel. What started as an unexpected job had become something more, a purpose. Cut to Daniel sitting with Mr. Harrington in the study, both sipping tea. The old man studies him for a moment before speaking. "Mr. Harrington, you've done well, Daniel. Better than I could have imagined." Daniel, grinning, "Honestly, I think Oliver taught me just as much as I taught him." Mr. Harrington nods approvingly, then leans forward. "Mr. Harrington, I meant what I said before, Daniel. You have potential far beyond waiting tables. I don't just want you to mentor Oliver. I want you to work with me. I want to sponsor your education. Business, finance, anything you choose." Daniel blinks in shock, the weight of the offer sinking in. Daniel, hesitant, "Sir, I don't know if I belong in that world." Mr. Harrington chuckles, shaking his head. "Mr. Harrington, and yet, here you are. You've already proven yourself, Daniel. The question is, do you believe it?" Daniel looks down, thinking of his mother, his sister, his struggles. And then, he thinks of Oliver, of everything they've built together. Slowly, he exhales and meets Mr. Harrington's gaze. Daniel, smiling, "Yeah, I think I do." Cut to the final scene. Daniel, now dressed in a sharp suit, walking through an office building beside Mr. Harrington. Oliver runs up to him, grinning. "Oliver, you're staying, right?" Daniel ruffles his hair, smiling. Daniel, "Yeah, buddy, I'm staying." As they walk together, the camera pulls back, showing Daniel stepping into a future he never thought possible, all because of one simple act of kindness. One small act can change a life, and sometimes, it changes more than just one.